Here we are, it's lighting day. And I'm looking at this. It looks like I'm looking over here because I'm looking over here because I'm taking a look at the way that my face is illuminated, and I'm starting to like what I see. I'm seeing that my face it has kind of a little bit of light side, a little bit of a dark side. It looks pretty good in terms of color. I am naturally a little bit tanner than this in real life. It just looks like I have been living in a cave for the past 6 months, but trust me, I'm really quite tan. And I can start to get a little bit of separation from the background, although the light that I have is powerful enough that it's kind of overpowering this little sort of accent light that I have here in the back. But this is really starting to look good. And by the way, I'm still recording with my iPhone. The only thing that's changed between the last video and this video is I have a much improved light. And what that means is that it can feed the camera a lot more information, and I'm not stuck with just this little guy. Remember I showed you this guy in the intro? This was the newer like streamer LED light or something like that. And now I have an upgraded professional quality light setup that still has a little way to go. I'll show you why in just a second. But anyway, if you don't know who I am, I'm Martine Wilson, and I used to create content in this pro studio where I had access to all kinds of stuff. Editors, cinematographers, lights. We even had things to, like, I guess you'd call them like jacks on wheels to move stuff around. We could do fake backgrounds if we wanted to do fake backgrounds. We could do green screens. We even had these little command centers where you could control the recording that was in one room from another room. So I had all kinds of stuff. And now what I'm doing is I'm building a studio in my home so that I can create content that has that same level of quality that I can then show to my clients. I can then post on YouTube. I can put it wherever I want. So if you want to follow along and see why it is I'm making the decisions that I'm making and see what kind of equipment I end up buying and what equipment I end up not buying, just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, follow along. You know the drill. So today, again, lighting. What I have, it's going to be hard to show it to you now that I think about it. What I have is a really cool piece of lighting kit, which is called the Amaran 60D. And the Amaran 60D is a 60-watt daylight lamp. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but you have to remember that these are LEDs. So if you're thinking in old school sort of lighting terms, it's like a 600-watt bulb. But it's in this little thing. Let me see if I can do this without like destroying my whole setup. Okay, you're gonna think this is crazy because the other thing that I have on here, oh goodness, is a Godox CS-85 lantern softbox, which I don't even know if I can get it completely in the shot. But what it is it's basically, it's a little bit like one of those Chinese lanterns, right? It's just a giant light that really illuminates the room. Down here, this is the Godox 60D light. You can see it's sideways, but I have it set to 40%. So this thing can really, sorry, I'm off the shot for a second. I know that's like, you're not supposed to ever abandon your audience like that. I apologize. This thing is running at 40%, so it can really put out a lot of power, and that means that I can use it in all kinds of different situations. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've even changed, didn't really work out, my framing a little bit to include this over here, this window that I have. Not really going to work. I was hoping it was going to work. Not really going to work because basically what I'm doing, I'm adding the light inside so it's more on a level with the light that's outside, and so sometimes you can get the outside details. I think I'm going to have to deal with that a little bit. I'm going to have to work with it a little bit more. But what this light does, and here's the reason that I chose it. First of all, if you remember my 3 pillars, it has to be relatively inexpensive, it has to be relatively high quality, and I have to be able to buy it and sell it on the second-hand market. Well, this light is a little bit more expensive than the most basic light that would do this job. This is where I made some real sort of trade-offs. I spent 190 euros on the light new. But I've also seen them going secondhand online for like 180 or 170 euros. And so they sell really, really, really well. They keep their value and they're very easy to sell. Amaran is a brand that creates some really high-end equipment. So there's a lot of like professional videographers that just use Amaran lights. So that makes them really an attractive option in that regard, because I know that if I, for whatever reason, I'm going to abandon this whole project or whatever, I can sell this light probably in a couple days. The light box, the lantern, the Godox lantern, the big thing that looks like a giant onion that I bought that because it's very, very inexpensive. The company Godox is sort of the cheaper, sort of lower end lighting manufacturer that a lot of people work with. I almost bought a Godox light as well, but I decided to get the more expensive light, and then this modifier, it's called a modifier, the lantern, was like 57 euros or something, so it's really quite cheap. I may not be able to sell it, but because it was 57 euros, it's not going to kill me if, you know, I can't get rid of it. So that combination for me works out really well. And the thing with lighting, it's an interesting, it's like, this is like, the lighting is like this whole world. I had really no idea what I was getting into with the lighting, because when we were working in the studio, I didn't, you know, I would kind of pay attention, but I wouldn't really pay attention. We just had these big lights with these things that people called softboxes. They would set them up, they would point them at us, and we would go. I didn't realize how much of an art and science there is to doing good lighting, and it's actually quite difficult. So if you use softboxes, they're these big kind of squares. You've probably seen them in professional setups where you shoot the light. And I chose to go with a lantern instead of the softbox because it requires a lot less technical expertise to get pretty good results. Basically what the lantern does is it creates a much more diffuse light. What I mean by that is that light goes kind of everywhere in the room at about the same amount. And so in order for me to get pretty good illumination, all that I need to do is set this light up kind of, you know, it's a little bit off center, but like right behind my camera, maybe a little bit above my head height, and it looks good enough. Like when I look at myself, I think that the way that it's illuminating my face is pretty good. And I didn't really have to think that much about it. So if you have a softbox, you have to be much more careful with the placement, the relative amount of power that they're sending out with all kinds of different things. And there's all these other kinds of light. This is even crazier than microphones, I realized. You know, you can get, what I got is called a cob light, C-O-B. I can't remember what that, I think it's like continuous output something, cob light. This is kind of the standard, but you'll also see LED panels. You'll see ring lights. Everybody has ring lights now because they're doing stuff on Instagram. Those typically are kind of a pain in the butt for me, and I don't like their form factor, so they're hard for me to store and hard for me to keep around. You can see on-camera lights. Those don't work for the kind of stuff that I do because they're a little bit too focused, and you have to be really good to make them look good. And then there are multicolor lights. So in this case, I got a daylight light. So what it does is it actually gives out a pretty cold light, which is a little bit unfortunate because I could almost use this to just like light up my living room. But the light that comes out of it is pretty cold because it looks just like daylight. And the other kind of light is called bicolor. Sorry, it's called bicolor. And usually what that means, or not usually, what that means is you can either make the light cold or warm. So it gets a little bit more yellowy browny and it's more comfortable, it's nice, it's pleasant. The reason I didn't go for a bicolor light is A, they're more expensive, and B, with having that additional control means that you have to have additional knowledge, capabilities, and understanding of how lighting works in order to get good results out of your camera. And I understand that a lot of people, when they use a bicolor light, they end up like making their skin look like red or kind of like, I don't know, like radioactive or something. And it's a little bit easier to deal with a daylight. It gives you it's easy to get a sort of more natural representation of what your skin tone looks like. The final light, I think I mentioned it, the final light that I will actually probably invest in at some point, I'm not really sure when, is RGB lights. That stands for red, green, blue lights. And what those do is they can create basically any color in the spectrum of colors of light. And what you use them for is not for this, like, this is, you know, you could consider this to be a key light, not exactly a key light, but the key light is the light that illuminates your subject, the person that you're taking the video of. And the RGB lights, what they do is they create accents. So what I could do is if I had an RGB, I could put one here behind me and it would make this, I would actually put it on that wall that's white, and it could make that wall kind of whatever color I want, have a really nice glow. It could have like a pink glow, it could have an amber glow, it could have a blue glow. If I wanted, I could put another one on the brick wall side, and they could be sort of accenting colors. So you can do a lot with light, but the thing is, if when you start talking to lighting experts, they have a lot of advice. They have a lot of advice. They have a lot of advice. And what you need is just a little bit of advice. Start out with a lantern and a cob light, something like the Amaran 60D. You can also go with, there's a really similar version from Godox that's called something like the, oh man, what is it called? It's the Godox 60, I don't know, whatever. And there's also another one from Neewer, which is sort of the cheapest of the entry-level brands, which is kind of similar in performance. But those ones, they actually have fans. The crazy thing is this actually has a fan too. They're all going to have fans, and those fans can create noise. You might be hearing a little bit of noise right now, and that's because I'm recording on my Mac, and my Mac is getting mad at me, so I'm going to have to stop recording in just a minute. But in the end, all these different sort of factors are really hard to swim through. Let me tell you, the lighting was a pain. It was really hard for me to get through. And so in the end, I think that the simplest, best, easiest, most productive way to get really good content is just get a lantern. I would actually get a smaller lantern if I had to do over again, because I didn't realize that the 85 is like literally like this big, and like a 60-watt daylight bulb, and that's going to make setting up your camera a lot easier. You're not going to have to know as many tips. And speaking of cameras, pretty soon I'm going to be able to show you some footage made with a brand new camera, and I'm going to be able to tell you what camera it is that I bought and why, and I'm really excited about it. So if you know anything about lighting, let me know in the comments, because I want to know what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. I feel like I understand sound a little bit better, and I'm going to sound really stupid if I say that. My sound is coming out really badly, but I feel that conceptually I understand sound a lot better than lighting. So if you have any really hot tips for how you can easily make changes either to the sort of subject lighting that I'm using now with the lantern, or cool accent lighting that I can do without having to invest in those RGB lights, because those are actually decent. RGB lights are like a couple $100 per, I think. So I might have to wait a little bit on getting those. Otherwise, get ready for the next video, which is going to come out really soon, to see what's going to happen in camera land, because I know that most people, when they think about videography, the main thing that they think about is the camera. And if you're noticing, I'm doing the camera last, and we'll talk about that too in the video.